Man, if you were to have told me a few years ago that Jack Catterall would beat Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis, I would have told you that you were out of your mind and you probably didn't know a lot about boxing. But that's exactly what Jack Catterall has a chance at doing this weekend in front of a friendly crowd in Manchester. In fact, he's a minus 350 favorite against Prograis to have a chance at becoming a guy who beat Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis. So how the mighty have fallen, especially if you look at this last generation of elite and near elite 140 talent. I would say Jose Ramirez is probably relatively the highest performing out of that little group. And it's interesting because Josh Taylor was sitting high, like he was on everybody's top 10 pound for pound. He had become undisputed 140 pound champ. He had beaten Regis Prograis in that World Boxing Super Series semifinal, where Prograis then went into, the proverbial boxing promotional wilderness trying to find a big fight. After he lost to Taylor, he beat guys like Juan Heraldez, Ivan Redkach, and Tyrone McKenna. One of those fights, I think the Redkach fight was on like a Jake Paul maybe versus Ben Askren or versus Woodley 1 undercard, one of those. But Regis Prograis was having trouble finding a meaningful fight after that showdown of undefeateds versus Josh Taylor. So then Regis Prograis had the fight against Jose Zepeda here in Carson, California. I went to that fight. I actually have been to 2 of Prograis' last 3 fights. I went to the Zepeda fight where Prograis stopped Zepeda in the 11th round to become a 2-time 140 pound champion, because that's where he picked up the vacant WBC 140 pound title, stopping Zepeda in Carson in November of 2022. And then Prograis had that very unimpressive title defense against Danielito Zorrilla, where Prograis, won a very disputed split decision against Zorrilla. Zorrilla was moving around the ring. Prograis was having trouble closing the distance. Zorrilla was very sudden, so he'd move, and explode with a punch or two. And Prograis looked like he never really got going, but Prograis was awarded that split decision win. And then Prograis fights Devin Haney at the Chase Center in San Francisco. That was where Devin Haney made his 140 pound debut against Prograis. And Devin Haney really embarrassed Prograis at the end of the day when you think about it. So that was the other Prograis fight that I've been to. That was a very fun, interesting environment because there are not too many elite fights that take place in the Bay Area. This was one of them. And Devin Haney really shined this night. I know that he has since had that terrible and controversial night against Ryan Garcia. And I know that a lot of fight fans like to drag Devin Haney and his name through the mud. It's really pretty terrible. Like I went to that Riyadh season Terrence Crawford versus Madrimov fight here in Los Angeles. And the biggest boo of the night was when Devin Haney was circling the perimeter of the venue. Every side that he would be on as he was circling around that venue, he was just showered with boos. And I mean, this is another conversation for another day, but some will say, oh, it's because of the lawsuit. Well, no, this is before the lawsuit. And I don't know why it's Devin Haney who's continuously getting villainized when, the way I see it, he was the victim, not only because of what took place in the ring when Ryan Garcia put hands on him, but because I know Devin Haney accepted the fight after Ryan Garcia blew weight by a few pounds. But what Devin Haney didn't sign up for was to fight somebody who was on PEDs. And that's exactly what it turned out to be. So I just think that the boxing vitriol is misplaced here. I think it's really pretty disgusting, but again, that's another conversation for another day. But on that night at the Chase Center, Devin Haney shined in his 140 pound debut, becoming a 140 pound champion, dominating Regis Prograis. So those last 2 fights for Prograis have been very unimpressive, to where it's got Jack Catterall at a minus 350 against Prograis. So Prograis was once a WBA 140 pound champion a few years ago. We're talking 2018, 2019, during that 140 pound World Boxing Super Series where Regis Prograis beat Terry Flanagan, a former 135 pound belt holder, and then Prograis beat Kirill Relic. And in I would say one of Prograis' 2 or 3 biggest wins. That win against Catterall Relic, the TKO in the 6th round, that was one of Prograis' best wins, and that's where he earned the WBA 140-pound title. And then it was in his next fight against Josh Taylor where they had that showdown, and Josh Taylor won a close, very good fight, but Josh Taylor won a close majority decision against Prograis. And then that's when Prograis went into the promotional boxing wilderness, messing with outlets like Pro Bellum. Jack Catterall, I believe, was with Pro Bellum as well, which fell apart when there was that whole Daniel Kinahan scandal. But because of Regis Prograis' last 2 fights against Danielito Zorrilla and that embarrassment against Devin Haney, where Prograis got dropped like in the 3rd round, just got schooled, hardly won a round if he won a round. Like, I wouldn't be mad at a 12-0 Devin Haney scorecard, at least 11-1, maybe 10-2 at worst. More like 11-1. That's what it seemed to be, at least. So a lot of people think that Regis Prograis has fallen off. He's 35. He turns 36 in January. But if you rewind that clock to 2019, where he fought Josh Taylor and Josh Taylor won that close decision, that sent Josh Taylor after winning the World Boxing Super Series, because that was the final of the World Boxing Super Series. And then Josh Taylor fought against Jose Ramirez for the battle for undisputed, and Josh Taylor won that fight by a couple of rounds. I know there were a couple of controversial moments, but I thought Josh Taylor fought his butt off. Yes, he is rugged. Yes, he does throw hands in some of those moments where it's a little bit gray area on whether you should be punching, but some fighters are pretty good at kind of threading that needle. I think Bernard Hopkins is another example of a guy who has some, like, are you allowed to punch in that way or in that clinch or in that kind of gray area moment? And are you leading with the head, and are you kind of hitting when the ref is signaling stop? I mean, I thought that the ref, kind of mistapped Jose Ramirez on the back and didn't tap Josh Taylor in the same way, where I think Jose Ramirez was sent a signal that Josh Taylor wasn't, and then Josh Taylor fired a couple of shots and knocked Jose Ramirez down. Jose Ramirez got dropped twice in that fight. But yeah, Josh Taylor becomes undisputed, and you think that the future is bright. Again, he was on a lot of top 10 pound for pounds, and then he has this title defense against Jack Catterall, which really, it went terribly for Josh Taylor. Like, he got dropped, he got beaten to the punch in so many different scenarios. He was getting picked apart by this nice counterpuncher. Yes, Josh Taylor did kind of rally back. Yes, he did make things very rugged with Jack Catterall, but I really thought and still think that Jack Catterall deserved a decision win in that fight. But Josh Taylor got awarded the split decision win over Jack Catterall, and that was Jack Catterall's only loss. And so I was thinking, Josh Taylor should just move on and fight whoever he was planning on fighting before this first fight against Jack Catterall, right? Just stay away from this guy right now. You're lucky to have gotten that W, but Josh Taylor was insistent about making that fight happen again, to where it was scheduled and postponed, and Josh Taylor's been getting injury after injury, pushing fights back. And then Josh Taylor ended up pivoting after one of the postponements against Jack Catterall for the rematch. Josh Taylor pivoted and fought Teofimo Lopez, and Teofimo Lopez kind of embarrassed and beat the hell out of Josh Taylor. So that was the fight that had a lot of people thinking, if they didn't think this before, they thought, yeah, maybe Josh Taylor really just isn't the same guy anymore. To where when Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall, the rematch happened, I think Jack Catterall was the slight favorite, and that ended up being an excellent fight, where Jack Catterall started off super strong. I think he won like maybe 4 out of the first 5, maybe even 5 out of the first 6 rounds against Taylor. Taylor started to really rally back. Taylor did enough, I think, to win clearly, like maybe 4 rounds, but I think that 7-5 would have been about right for Jack Catterall, maybe even 8-4. You could even argue that. I don't think that a draw would have been a good decision. I thought that Jack Catterall won enough and banked enough of the rounds, even though it looked really good for Josh Taylor because he was rallying back. But if you're really scoring this fight round by round, I think Jack Catterall pulled it off, and they gave him a unanimous decision by a wider margin that I thought would have been the case. Like, I was thinking maybe 8-4, maybe even 7-5. The judges had it 117-111, 116-113, and 117-111. So 2 of the judges only gave Josh Taylor 3 rounds. 2 of the judges did. And then Bob Arum, after the decision, hopped in the ring and talked about what a disgrace it was that he's not coming back to have any of his fighters fight in Great Britain, in England. Because I know, technically Josh Taylor is British too. He's just Scottish, whereas Jack Catterall is English. And I didn't think that that was one of Bob Arum's brightest moments. However, I just listened to a Bob Arum interview with Dan Rayfield, and Bob Arum at like 93, I think he's almost 94, I believe. But at 93, he's still sounding great. He was very cognizant. For some reason, I keep on thinking, almost like I keep on thinking that Better Be If is about to fall off because he's like 39 years old. I keep on thinking that Bob Arum is like significantly diminished in terms of his ability to communicate. Nah, listen to that interview with Dan Rayfield on, I think, Big Fight Weekend, I think is the name of the podcast. But he interviews Bob Arum, and Bob Arum sounds great. But Bob Arum was dead wrong. I know he was riding for his fighter and everything, but to talk about how bad of a decision this was, where Jack Catterall got that decision, unanimous decision over Josh Taylor, maybe you could argue that 117, 111 was a bit wide, but I thought that Jack Catterall won that fight, even if Josh Taylor was all heart and really fought his way into contention and to make the fight a lot more competitive in the second half of the fight. Because there were moments in the first half of the fight, I thought Jack Catterall might stop Josh Taylor. And there were several headbutts in the first couple of rounds as well. But yeah, Josh Taylor really fought his way back into the fight. I just don't think he did enough to even the fight out. So Josh Taylor, in many people's minds, is a diminished, far diminished version of himself. And now I was kind of late to that party. I still held out belief that Josh Taylor, especially up until the Teofimo Lopez fight, that Josh Taylor still had it in him to perform at his top A level. Now, he's never been a great defensive fighter, but I think that it really starts and ends with the legs. I don't think that Josh Taylor's legs are the same and will ever be the same. On the Regis Prograis side, people think that he's fallen off because he's been a short-armed fighter to begin with, but he doesn't seem like he's able to use his legs to close the distance and to force enough exchanges against guys who are determined to control range against him. And Prograis used to be a fast-handed power puncher. I don't know if he's got the same hand speed, or maybe the hand speed just didn't look as fast against longer, taller guys like Zarria, like Devin Haney. Now, Devin Haney wasn't running against Prograis. Again, he like dropped him, I believe, in the third round. Devin Haney was just standing his ground and outboxing him at range. And because Regis Prograis is a southpaw, and this Catterall versus Prograis fight is going to be southpaw versus southpaw, it was really right hands and even uppercuts that was allowing Devin Haney to control the fight without running, keeping the fight in the middle of the ring, and even stepping forward and kind of not truly walking Prograis down, but standing his ground, drawing that line in the sand, and just beating up on Prograis at range. And it looked like there wasn't anything Prograis could do about it. So that fight had a lot of people coming away from that one like, damn, Devin Haney looked brilliant, but I don't think Regis Prograis has it anymore. And again, Jack Catterall is a minus 350, whereas Prograis is like a plus 333. So again, how the mighty have fallen when you consider Josh Taylor, Regis Prograis, and then Jose Zepeda, who after getting stopped by Prograis, picked up a lower level win and then lost a wide unanimous decision against Richardson Hitchens, where Hitchens won damn near every round against Zepeda. Controlling range, Zepeda looked like he needed to swim across a moat to get to Richardson Hitchens, who had a difficult fight against Gustavo Lemos, who's about to fight Keyshawn Davis. I'm looking closely at that fight. I'm interested in that one. That one is actually Lemos going down from 140 to 135 to fight Keyshawn Davis there. But yeah, after losing by stoppage to Regis Prograis, Zepeda had that lower level fight, lost a wide decision to Richardson Hitchens, and then got stopped by Dalton Smith. Yes, he has since beaten Ivan Redkach, who really should be retiring at this point. I really hope that that's Ivan Redkach's last professional fight, because Ivan Redkach had just gotten stopped before that against Jukimbayev on Pro Box TV, which I really love how they put together those Wednesday midweek fights. Good matchups, a lot of good 50-50 matchups too. Nicholas Walters is about to fight Jojo Diaz pretty soon on Pro Box TV. Check that out if you haven't. Like, if Turki Al-Sheikh buys boxing basically and gets all those major promoters to work with him, where he's running the show, calling the shots, I hope that you still have thriving lower level, I'm saying former champions, up and comers, journeymen who are in crossroads fights, types of fights. I still hope that you have stuff like that, like we're getting now with Pro Box TV. So yeah, Jose Zepeda's seen better days, as have Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis. And a little side question, is Josh Taylor a Hall of Famer. Like, I know that he's been an undisputed 140-pound champion, and he's got some good wins. You know, he beat Jose Ramirez, beat Regis Prograis. He technically has that decision win over Jack Catterall. He's beaten a prime Ivan Baranchyk, Ryan Martin, an aging Victor Postal, so O'Hara Davies, Miguel Vasquez. So he's got some pretty good wins, but I'm just gonna put this out there as a question. Is Josh Taylor, when it's all said and done, a Hall of Famer? Let me know your thoughts there. But now let's size up Jack Catterall versus Regis Prograis. Prograis been, you know, one of my favorite fighters for a while. Yes, there is some bias there. He's of a Creole descent from Louisiana. My dad, you know, I'm of Creole descent. My dad's from New Orleans, Louisiana, and his family had moved, you know, from Louisiana to Los Angeles. And so that's why I'm a SoCal boy. But yeah, I've always liked, you know, Regis Prograis. I liked his style of fighting, especially when he was in his prime around the time of that Catterall Relic fight. I thought that there were some shades of Shane Mosley, because I thought that he was kind of a sudden, fast power puncher. I don't think he was as voluminous as Mosley, but I do think that there was some similarity. Of course, Prograis a southpaw, Mosley was right-handed, but I feel like in more recent fights, Prograis has become more chopping, left hook dominant and reliant, where he's not mixing up his punches and throwing as many combos as he was once upon a time. So I'm looking at Jack Catterall style wise. He's a very accurate counter puncher, throwing that left hand. He wants you to come in on him so he could time you when you come in and hit you with that left hand. Yes, he will get, you know, double up and triple up sometimes on that jab. I mean, he was eating Josh Taylor's lunch in different spots of their rematch with that jab. But by and large, Jack Catterall is letting Taylor come in. He's taking a step back, pop. And, you know, Jack Catterall finished strong after Taylor was like rebounding and really getting back into the fight. Jack Catterall fought really well in the last 2 rounds of that fight in the rematch against Taylor. But Jack Catterall, again, a very accurate left-handed counterpuncher. Regis Prograis is looking to get into range to where he can let his left hand go, but he'll also hit you with kind of a quick, short left hook. So I'm wondering, because Jack Catterall, yes, he is a counterpuncher, but he's not built like Devin Haney. He's not shoulder to shoulder. He doesn't have the same middle of the ring commanding presence to where he can own and dominate a fight with a jab or with a straight right hand. Devin Haney has those tools where he doesn't need to back up, and then explode. He can draw the line in the sand, and so can Jack Catterall to a degree. But Devin Haney just looked like he had Regis Prograis fully tamed in a way that I'm not sure Jack Catterall could do what Haney was able to do there, just kind of pummel him with well-timed shots at range. Jack Catterall sometimes has a lot of lulls in different rounds, especially during the second halves of fights. Again, in this rematch, Josh Taylor came on strong in the second half. I don't know if Prograis at 35, we'll say 35, and he's closer to 36 than he is to having turned 35. I don't know if Prograis can put his foot on the gas as tenaciously as Josh Taylor did. Because look, as the other skills erode and the other abilities erode for Josh Taylor, his reflexes, his legs, and so forth, his heart and his determination to be rugged and to just fight it out, I feel like that's kind of the last thing to go for Josh Taylor. I mean, I think that a lesser guy, heart-wise, would have probably gotten stopped that night against Teofimo Lopez. But Regis Prograis, I feel like there have been more fights from him where I'm like, damn, I feel like you should have done more, especially in those last 2 fights against Danielito Zorrilla, where it's like, yo, you're on the verge of losing the title in front of your home city in New Orleans against Danielito Zorrilla. It's like, you better start doing something to separate yourself in this fight and to convincingly win on the scorecards, because I don't see it, right? So it was anybody's guess who won that fight after the sound of the final bell against Zorrilla. So again, between that fight and the embarrassing loss, the lopsided loss against Devin Haney, I'm wondering, can Regis Prograis put enough punches together in a fight where the guy's not like jumping on him and coming to him in a way that Jose Zepeda or Ivan Redkach tries to do style-wise? Even Josh Taylor, he's in your chest. He's jumping on you with a very aggressive style. Yes, Jack Catterall will pick his spots and will start putting combinations together. Once he thinks that he's kind of on a roll, he will just launch a left hand and throw a couple combinations and start backing you up. He will do some of that. I think that he's probably going to look like the more accurate puncher and the cleaner puncher between him and Prograis. Again, this fight will also be taking place in Manchester, so this crowd's going to be going crazy, I believe, for Jack Catterall. So even in a fight that it might appear that Prograis might have edged it 7-5 or something like that, I could still see it resulting in a draw or a close win for Jack Catterall. Now, again, Prograis' volume, I don't think will be his friend, even though if you think about it, Jack Catterall and Jose Zepeda, they do have a lot of similarities in the style. They are both counterpunching southpaws, but I feel like at this stage, Jack Catterall's just a bit sharper, has got slightly better defense, doesn't have great defense. Look, Josh Taylor doesn't move his head a lot. Jack Catterall kind of moves his head. Regis Prograis moves his head, at least in the first half of the fight, is able to slip pretty well against most fighters, not against Devin Haney so much, but against a lot of others, he's able to slip well. I'm just wondering if in the second half of the fight, you know, as you age, your lower back starts to tighten up to where if you were able to do a lot of this stuff in the first few rounds, I don't think that you're going to have the same fluidity of motion as your legs start to feel heavier and as your lower back starts to tire a little bit. You just start to naturally fatigue, especially again as you age. Jack Catterall's got a youth advantage here, and even though he normally does slow down in the second half of fights, like some of his fights straight up hit lulls, like a couple fights ago for him against Jorge Linares, and this was a very aged Linares who went the full 12 rounds against Catterall. But again, I keep going back to, although Catterall and Jose Zepeda are both counterpunching southpaws, and Prograis chopped down Jose Zepeda over the course of several rounds, again stopped him in the 11th, can Jack Catterall dominate the center of the ring in the way that Devin Haney did? I don't think that he can. I don't think that he's got the same attributes in that regard. But I do think that he could take a step back, make Regis Prograis, who does a lot of kind of this stuff, he's moving his hands, a little bit of wasted motion. I mean, he's usually pretty calm and stuff, but he's looking for his moment to jump in there and kind of flash a couple, right hands to set up big left hands. Some of that I think can be effective, but I think that Jack Catterall is going to have some success counterpunching those Regis Prograis pursuits. I think Regis Prograis is actually going to have some big moments here against Catterall. I think that he's the harder puncher between the two. I think that he might even rock Catterall somewhere in the middle or late rounds. But I think Catterall is going to bank enough rounds, especially in the first half of the fight, where I think that Jack Catterall is going to be a good enough boxer, is going to be able to stay away from enough dangerous exchanges, which again, these guys are both about the same height. So Jack Catterall is not going to have that same length and height advantage that Zarria and Haney did. But again, he's a clean counterpuncher. I think that this fight, by and large, by the end of it, is going to look pretty even. Like, I could see Jack Catterall getting a flash knockdown on Prograis, basically catching him slipping, hitting him with a counter, just like a flash knockdown. I could see that happening. I could also see Prograis hurting and really dropping Jack Catterall as Prograis really gets going and starts trying to chop down and outwork Catterall when Prograis starts gaining some momentum. I just don't know if at 35, close to 36, Prograis has enough to bank enough rounds to where even if you start picking it up in the second half and have a lot of bigger looking success, to win it on a round by round scored scorecard for 2 out of the 3 judges in Manchester, England. So I'm actually going to go with Catterall to win a very close, maybe even slightly controversial, but a close decision that looks like a pretty even fight, but it's going to go to Jack Catterall. I don't think it's going to be a robbery. I just think it's going to be a close decision that goes Jack Catterall's way. I think that Jack Catterall is going to really bank some of those early rounds, and maybe it's going to look like, damn, Prograis really is looking a little bit washed here. He's getting beaten to the punch, and then I think Prograis is going to be able to start turning things around, but I don't think at the end of the day it's going to be enough. I think that he's going to start gaining momentum, but then Prograis is going to have big lulls to where he starts to tire. Maybe we get some unspectacular rounds somewhere in the second half of the fight, but again, Prograis is going to do almost enough to get over that hump, but not quite enough. So yeah, look, I think that 350 is a little bit shocking when you think, damn, this is Jack Catterall versus Regis Prograis. It really comes down to where you think Regis Prograis is on his career trajectory. I know my cousin recently pointed out a couple days ago that Regis Prograis a few months ago was supposedly, you know, training MMA. So I don't know if he was really looking to make a career change, and that's what Prograis thought of his boxing career in that moment. I don't know where Prograis really believes he is, but it's a big opportunity for Prograis to beat a really good fighter in Jack Catterall. I just think that he's gonna come up a little bit short. Let me know your thoughts on Jack Catterall versus Prograis. Again, I'm taking Jack Catterall via, we'll say, either majority decision or split decision over Regis Prograis. Maybe majority decision where one judge has it a draw and it's overruled by the other two judges who might have it slightly for Jack Catterall. So I'm gonna go with Jack Catterall via something like that. Let me know your thoughts about this fight in the comments. Who wins and how? And just judging by the 140-pound division, how do you think that their respective futures stack up depending on the outcome of this fight? Like, you've got Devin Haney, where we really don't know what that next move is. He vacated the title, right? Because he didn't fight Sandor Martin, so he's no longer a 140-pound champion. We've got Liam Paro, who just beat Subriel Matias a few months ago. Teofimo Lopez is still the WBO champion, but he's fighting on Top Rank, so you would have to make some sort of a cross-promotional fight for him to fight a lot of the other guys we would like to see him in the ring with. We still have Jose Ramirez out there. I think he's now with Golden Boy because he was with Top Rank. I think he's now with Golden Boy because he had that Rances Barthélemy fight where it looked like Jose Ramirez might get stopped by the older Rances Barthélemy. So who knows what Jose Ramirez is really up to. Let me know if he's scheduled a fight and I just don't recall. You've got Alberto Puello, who beat Gary Antoine Russell for the vacant WBC interim belt. That was the belt that Devin Haney had won off of Regis Prograis. I think that Alberto Puello is going to be elevated to full WBC champ if he hasn't been already. Remember, Alberto Puello had beaten Batir Akhmedov for the vacant WBA belt at the time, but he was stripped of that belt because he tested positive for PEDs. He has had 2 fights since, the second of which was that win over Gary Antoine Russell. So Alberto Puello is out there. You still have Subriel Matias, Richardson Hitchens, as I mentioned. I don't believe that Ryan Garcia is really ever going to compete at 140 again. Who knows what the future holds for him. And then you've got the WBA belt, which Rolly Romero inexplicably held, you know, after that controversial win over Ishmael Barroso, who recently got stopped. I don't know if y'all caught that. I don't remember if that was on Pro Box TV, but it looks like that Ishmael Barroso ride might be over because he's about 40 as it is, but he just got stopped in his last fight. And then Rolly Romero with that WBA belt got beat by Isaac Cruz, who got beat by Jose Valenzuela, and they're gonna run it back. So you got them in the mix as well. But yeah, let me know what you think about Jack Catterall versus Regis Prograis and the 140-pound division in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.